Alright, now for some fun. Let's start to shade this and really make it start to look cool. So I'm going to minimize that. Maybe we'll need it later. I don't know. So these are all the helper node stuff. And remember, we're never going to render any of these things. We want to make dedicated nodes to do that, which are not actually inherently different than any other geometry node, except that we will call it RNDR underscore ground, and later on the mantra node we'll say only render the nodes that have RNDR. And the reason why we do this is because if I just said render the ground, but I had like this selected by accident, then it's going to render this by accident. So that sucks. Let's do an object merge to bring in exactly what in ground we want to render, which is the out here. We also want to render as part of this node because we can just combine these two. Let's go get the rocks. So the rocks out as well. So it just merges them together. And that's it. Render ground. What else do we need? We need another geometry node. This one will be called render liquid external. This is going to be the actual refractive, water shader. The one that actually is mostly just clear, but wrong one. Mostly just clear, but we'll add some little extra bells and whistles to it. But if you remember the first lesson, it's going to be the outside. So the liquid surface is what we want here. We want to turn on the motion blur, or velocity blur rather. And we want to copy and paste this one. I'll put it next to this one. This will be the internals of it. This will be the fog, the actual volume that represents the particulate on the inside. This one I'd like to not have the velocity blur on. I find that I get errors sometimes when I try to do velocity blur on the uniform volume shader we're going to use. So we did the same thing again in Liquids 1. So we got that. And I guess that's it for now. Make sure that this is a packed disk primitive, which is what we talked about earlier. And if it's not, make sure that on here, the load from file is set to packed disk primitive. You can keep it set to full geometry, or bounding box if you don't want to look at it. I like to look at it though. So full geometry. Very good. So now what else do we need? We need the mantra node. So over here in the out area, drop down to mantra node. We can just keep it called that. Now, if you just hook it up to this, thinking that it will render get out of here. Thinking that it will render the frames right after that, well, you would be right, except our mantra node, we want it to only render frame 48 to 96. So that can cause problems with these. It would technically work, but for a few reasons, one of which is I do want all of the frames to be cached to disk so that I can look at them in case there's a problem. I want these to render the whole frame range. So the easiest way to do that is drop down a batch node between the two. The batch node always render inputs full frame range. So whatever this is set to, which is, as you know, the full frame range, I'm not even going to go find it, it will do that still, and then this can do just its 48 to 96 business. So that's cool. Where do we want to put these frames? We'll put these back in our project area, put in a render subdirectory. Let's put them in terms of this version business that we like to do. So V again, then paste the relative references. We'll make it big so that it goes into its own version subdirectory, and then we'll call it final frame dot, and then just do the version thing again, dot the frame number dot EXR, which is the standard that we use all the time. So there you go. You can always middle click that if you want to see it resolve to all that good stuff that we just said, but rest assured that it will. What else we need to turn on? In the objects, we need to turn off candidate objects. We don't want it to just render whatever happens to have the display tag on. We want it to render RNDR star all the time. And you can see if you click this, it's showing us as an example that that is what it will render. So RNDR star, find and force render whether they're on or not. What else we got to do? You could turn on override camera resolution to do half resolution. I'm going to keep it actually at the full one for now. I think it'll render fast enough. Under rendering, put on physically based rendering. We'll keep allow motion blur off for now. We'll actually put the pixel samples down to 2 and 2 for now, which is far less. Let's put the max ray samples down to 4, the noise level up to 0.02, and the stochastic samples down to 1. These are all things that will make this render quickly. Having set that all up, let's make a high-res take so that when we are ready, we can do that. So I'll say render, or rather HQ render. So we want 3 and 3 back. We want, this probably can stay at 4. We definitely want the noise level back to the default. I mean, that's really great for having things render quickly. So the stochastic samples, I'm going to leave it 1 for now. That's for volume shading. It will make volumes render much nicer and more cheaply than actually raising the pixel samples here. So mainly we want the pixel samples back up. And so I'm just going to exclude this. No, I'll keep it in. I want to keep these in because these will be helpful to render it more quickly, even at a higher res setting. So I actually do want to keep those. Very good. I don't think we need anything else in here. Let me think. I'm going to say no. So there you go. So our Mantra render is set up. We can see then, I guess, what that looks like. We can have our very first render. Let's see what we get. It's not going to be great. This is going to be really annoying. Get those windows. Look at that. Beautiful. I mean, it's right. We didn't give it a light, so it gave us a light by default coming from the camera. We didn't give any materials, so it took a default material. I will say though, let's do all of our tests on a later frame, one that is more representative of what we're doing. And as we go, click on this camera here to take snapshots that we can compare to, at least until Houdini inevitably crashes while doing this.